using the Singer 127 in my treadle base today, and I'll zoom in a little and show you a little bit of stitching. Let me just get the camera adjusted, and we'll get started. So the 127 is one of my favorites because it's big. There's a lot of space between the needle and the column, and that gives me a lot of room to wad up a quilt. Using this type of quilting foot, and this lever comes in contact with the needle bar as it goes up and down, and that causes the foot to hop up and down, which releases the pressure on the quilt and makes it slide. Because on these old machines you could not lower the feed dogs. So I set my feed dogs at a really short stitch length, as short as I can get it to go. But the real thing that's making this work is not the feed dogs being dropped or the stitch length, it's that this foot hops up and down a little bit. As the needle goes up, that foot pops up. And that is what releases the pressure and makes the quilt slide. The other thing that's real helpful in that is I'm using one of these sliding mats. It's about that big, and it fits over your machine, and it makes a slipperier surface that the quilt will slide over, and makes it easier to push it around. When I'm using one of those slider mats, I don't feel the need to also use quilting gloves. Quilting gloves have rubberized little knobs or buttons on the palms that create a grip for you. But when I'm using one of the mats, I don't feel like I need to do that. What I do try to do is keep my hands sort of in a shape like that, two L's, forward and backward, and that they kind of slide out to the side, and that keeps a nice flat surface while I'm working on the quilt. The placement of your hands can make a difference in how easy it is to see what you're doing. If I want to stop, I usually try to stop in a corner or at a spot where it's not going to make a difference. If I stop right in the middle of one of my curves, I'll usually be able to tell by looking at it, because that curve won't come out as nice and uniform. If I start and stop at a corner, it comes out better. And so whenever I want to adjust my hands or adjust the quilt, it's better to stop in a corner than to try stopping in the middle of a curve. So sometimes you need to plan your attack so that you can have a good start and stop point to readjust. The temptation for me is always to try to go too fast and not take my time, and I always regret that. So don't feel like you need to just keep zipping through. I've heard people say, oh, I do so much better when I'm quilting if I go really, really fast. Well, I do a lot better if I go really, really slow. Everybody's different, I suppose, so try and figure out what works best for you. But that's one of the reasons I like my treadle, is because I have an easier time adjusting that speed, and it's easier for me to get nice stitches if I'm not zipping through it at 1,000,000 miles an hour. This quilt you may notice, I don't know, it's an antique quilt, and while it's a very nice, well-made quilt top, back in the turn of the century or so when they made it, they didn't have rotary cutters, they didn't have templates, they didn't have all the fancy things we have now. So it isn't perfect. But some of the blocks are a little more or less square. All the points don't line up perfectly. If anybody made it today, they'd probably be kicking themselves, thinking, "Oh, my points aren't perfect, and it's not perfectly square and flat." Doesn't bother me at all. Beautiful. But you will need to let your quilting be in coordination with the top. If you try and make your quilting lines perfect and straight, but the blocks aren't, it's going to look weird. So you have to quilt in a way that is in coordination with the quilt. If the quilt's not perfect, the quilting lines can't be perfect and uniform either. You sort of have to cheat to make it look that way. So when I stop, I want to pull up my thread so that I have a good place to tie it off. If both threads are not up to the top, then I have to tie it on the top, and then I have to go back and tie it on the back. So I pull them both up to the top so that it's easier to tie it off. But anyway, I got a bunch more of that to do, and I'll come back and do the blue center pieces, and then work on the wide border.